And committee, we're going to roll into the next one. If you need a break, you can take a break, but we're going to go right into the next hearing. So Representative Hill, you'll be up with 236.
Thank you very much.
This opens the hearing on House Bill 236. Representative Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 236. This is a bill that has to do with the regulation of what are called private alternative adolescent residential or outdoor programs in the state of Montana. I'm going to make this very brief and tell you a few things about this bill. When we go to executive action, I'm going to print off to you the 2 or 3 pages in the Montana Code that are about regulating private alternative adolescent residential or outdoor programs. It's in Chapter 37, Section 48 of the Montana Code. These few pages that regulate these types of outdoor programs, it falls right between outfitters and guides, regulating outfitters and guides, and accountants. This section of the Montana Code, just so you know, because it's not something we hear very often in Judiciary, it's in a section called Professions and Occupations and the state's regulation of professions and occupations. In between, as I said, outfitters and guides and accountants are these types of programs, but also found in this section are athletic trainers, massage therapists, nutritionists, funeral directors. So this is just how we regulate a type of education program, business. That's what I'm sort of giving you an overview of what we're dealing with here. There's a couple things that I want to say about this bill. I'm not sure what you're going to hear from the proponents and opponents, but I'm going to tell you, we'll talk more about it in executive action. The regulation of these programs in the state of Montana has received significant media attention. And you're going to hear today that's generally about one program in the state. What I want to tell you here today is that's not why I'm bringing the bill. I'm bringing the bill not for the media attention, although you will hear every state newspaper has covered this bill, and it's received even national media attention. This was on Anderson Cooper and CNN. This bill is not about religion. I went to 12 years of Catholic school where there was a crucifix on the wall and we prayed every day. I'm very proud of my religious education. This is not about religion. This is about regulating these programs. Chapter 48 has a purpose, or Chapter 37, Section 48. The purpose, private alternative adolescent programs. So I want you to look at the bill. The bill is going to show you the definitions under the purpose. Okay? So this bill eliminates an exemption from licensure of these programs. Chapter 37, Section 48, 101, the purpose of us even creating this section of the code. The purpose of the board is to license and regulate private alternative adolescent residential or outdoor programs as a public service, to monitor and maintain a high standard of care, and to ensure the safety and well-being of the adolescents and parents using the programs. Necessary licensure processes and safety standards for programs are best developed and monitored by the professionals that are actively engaged in providing private alternative adolescent residential care. The purpose of this section of the code is that we're going to provide these treatment programs for adolescents. So these are youth, these are kids, and these are kids generally that are vulnerable kids that are attending these private alternative adolescent residential or outdoor programs. The definitions including on what creates these programs are what are in the bill, but what not in the bill that's in code that, again, I'll share with you in executive action, is what these licensing requirements are. These programs are required to tell the state the description of the program, the description of the facility, what the goals and objections of the programs are for the program participants. These are not onerous standards. The state is just asking to know what the program is, what the facility looks like, what's the content of the program. Give us a list of the professional and supervisory employees. Give us the average daily census. Give us a copy of the program policies. What's the admission requirements, the behavior management programs that are going to be, what kind of communication you have with family members. What kind of routine and emergency medical and psychological care do the kids get? What kind of medication do they receive? This is what the state is regulating, to have these programs that take care of kids that are vulnerable and have problems. The board that licenses these programs, the board issues the license to 1 to 3 years, and it goes on in this to how a license is given. And generally, again, how we license these programs in between, in the code, outfitters and guides and accountants. This is how we license programs that take care of vulnerable youth. Here's the bill. The bill right now is, in the state of Montana,
Loosen you. Okay.
sorry, as you can see, turn the bill over. In the state of Montana right now, you can be exempt from requirements of state regulation of these types of programs if you are an organization, boarding school, or residential school that is an adjunct ministry of a church. 12 years of Catholic school I went. I have no problem with religious-based education. That's not what this is about. This is about us regulating programs that deal with vulnerable youth and whether or not you can be exempt if you are an adjunct ministry of a church. Now, I will tell you, there are many programs in the state of Montana that are religious-based, adolescent, alternative adolescent residential outdoor programs. Okay, there are many religious-based ones. And guess what? They voluntarily are regulated by the state of Montana, except one. And that's what we're here about today. And you're going to hear a lot of testimony on both sides. So with that, there isn't a lot more to say, and we can talk more in executive action.
Thank you, Representative Hill. Proponents, House Bill 236. Proponents, step forward, state your name, spell your last name for us.
Mr. Chairman and members.
You'll have to bend that microphone a little closer to you. There we go.
I
Thank
knew
you.
I was going to get that. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Darcy Kelly, Kelly, and I serve as a public member on the Montana Board of Private Alternative Adolescent Residential or Outdoor Programs, PARP. That's easier to say. At its December 2012 meeting, the board made the decision to unanimously support House Bill 236. I am here today on behalf of the board. The PARP board is supporting House Bill 236 as an important and necessary clarification of the original legislation that authorized the creation of the PARP board. The purpose of the legislation was to establish rules and standards of care for private programs operating in Montana that previously fell outside the regulatory authority of the Department of Health and Human Services. At hearings for the creation of the PARP board, it became apparent that the state of Montana needed to establish a licensing authority that applied to programs who served private paying children and their families. Without such licensing authority, any program that served private paying children was exempt from any regulation governing the standards of safety and care of such children. Since the PARP board was established, all private programs serving the emotional and behavioral needs of children are now subject to clear oversight and regulation with the specific exemptions outlined in Section 37-48-102 as follows. And I'll read it to you. Definitions. As used in this part, the following definitions apply. 6A. Program means a private alternative adolescent residential or outdoor program that provides a structured, private, alternative residential setting for youth who are experiencing emotional, behavioral, or learning problems and who have a history of failing in academic, social, moral, or emotional development at home, or in less structured traditional settings. B, the term does not include 1, any program that is required to be licensed or regulated by the state under Title 50, 52, or 53. 2, recreational programs such as Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or 4-H clubs. 3, organizations, boarding schools, or residential schools with a sole focus on academics. 4, residential training or vocational programs with a sole focus on education and vocational training. 5, youth camps with a focus on recreation and faith-related activities. Or 6, an organization, boarding school, or residential school that is an adjunct ministry of a church incorporated in the state of Montana. The current Park Board feels that all of these exceptions are reasonable, except for the exception number 6, any residential school that is an adjunct ministry of a church incorporated in the state of Montana. This definition is too broad, ill-defined, and poses a clear danger to children placed in residential programs in the state of Montana. As it stands, the exemption allows any private program to affiliate itself with a church and escape any requirement for following basic rules of safety and standards of care for children who have been placed outside of the oversight of their parents or guardians. Following the massive cases of abuse by officials of organized churches that have been made public in the past decade, it should be clear that simply being an affiliate or adjunct of an organized church is no guarantee that such programs will be operated according to basic safety standards. Moreover, there have been several recent articles and news programs that have made allegations regarding these church-affiliated and unlicensed programs in Montana. This written testimony, which I passed out, also includes links to some of those articles and news programs. It seems obvious that all programs serving emotionally and behaviorally troubled youth in the state of Montana should be duly licensed and fall under state supervision in order to protect a highly vulnerable population of children. As a board, we have been frustrated by complaints that have been registered against several programs that fell outside of regulation by either DPHHS or PARP. We've also spent thousands of dollars in legal fees when existing and previously licensed programs wanted to avoid regulation and licensure by simply claiming to be an adjunct ministry of a church, even though they had no previous affiliation with the church. Such chicanery and abuse of current statute intent should not be tolerated by the legislature, and therefore the Park Board strongly and respectfully argues the legislature to pass House Bill 236. And if you will allow me, I wanted to make also my statement. Again, my name is Darcy Kelly, Kelly. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and Master of Business Administration, currently serving as a public member on the Park Board, but I'm commenting on behalf of myself as a citizen of Montana. I support House Bill 236. I started my career in mental health by working as a frontline staff and later as a therapist in 2 different facilities that would have fallen under the purview of the Park Board. At that time, there was no licensure available to these facilities. For the most part, there was a lot of good work being done. I want to emphasize that. Youth were being helped. However, when things went wrong, they were serious. I found that both children and families did not have a forum in which to lodge complaints. Children aren't able to call out. They don't have access to phones. When complaints were made to the facility, they were either not taken seriously or the victim was blamed because he or she suffered from mental illness, or the issues were simply swept under the rug. I believe that specific examples are needed to prove the necessity of any legislation. In the case of House Bill 236, an exemption for some schools is an issue of protection of the public. Again, I'm not talking about potential problems. I'm talking about current and ongoing problems of a serious and often abusive nature. I myself have observed youth being physically abused and neglected. On one occasion, a boy was verbally provoked by staff. This was a youth that was about to graduate the program. They purposely told the rest of the staff that they were provoking him on purpose. And when the youth started to yell, 5 large men took him to the ground and were laying on top of him. All of these actions were in direct violation of internal policy, as well as de-escalation and restraint training received by all staff. As he lay there, helpless and unable to breathe, He began to squeak as the men threatened to restrain him with shackles. I later observed in the director's handwriting that the restraint training protocol was used in this case, and it was underlined twice. This was absolutely not true. When this incident was investigated, this document disappeared. Despite the number of people who observed this incident and reports from me as well as other staff to centralized intake, nothing was done. There was no justice, and this youth is damaged. He was betrayed by the very people who were being paid to care for and rehabilitate him. In another example, the staff failed to notice that one of the children was missing. He was missing for well over an hour. Head counts are a regular part of the work that we do, and the head counts weren't being done. Upon looking for him, they found him on top of the basketball backboard in the gymnasium with his nylon shoelaces that don't break tied to the posts and around his neck. He was going to jump. In another facility, I observed children being forced to walk to the owner's home carrying heavy equipment so they could shovel manure and snow in exchange for a cup of hot cocoa. They would work there for hours under staff supervision, under my supervision. These children were not in trouble, and they were not there as a behavioral intervention. They were told it was a coveted opportunity to go and get a cup of hot cocoa with the owners. There's no way to enforce existing laws, because I think there are lots of laws that apply in these cases. But how do you enforce a law such as child labor laws if you're unable to detect them? Again, I'll repeat that the children can't report this. They have no way to access for that. These issues are being reported in some cases, but not investigated. I myself was given an apology from DPHHS, who asked me why I didn't report these issues. Not only did the department apologize, there's a first. Get an apology from the government, that was awesome. They also told me that my 3-hour-long report to the investigator was never investigated and that I did the right thing by reporting. So there are people that are out there trying. We're not being heard. I also wanted to note that unlicensed employees all are told or should be told that they have an obligation to report, but may lack the motivation to do so. In fact, they may feel pressured not to say anything in order to keep their job and to keep helping many of the other children that they work with. I was specifically told by my employers not to call centralized intake, that there was an internal process, and that if the company found that a call to centralized intake was necessary, administration would perform that duty. As a licensed clinical social worker, I know what my obligation is. I have an ethical code that I follow. Before I was educated with my master's in social work and licensed, I was not aware of that, and I was listening to my supervisors. Some of you may have heard that there was a court order made last Friday against Ranch for Kids. They were threatened with having their power cut off. I quote from the Flathead Beacon, "They have been operating without a license since 2010 when its provisional license expired. Since that time, the Ranch for Kids decided they would avoid compliance with the law by calling themselves an adjunct ministry, taking advantage of the loophole that will be closed by passing House Bill 236. According to an article in the Havre Daily News, quote, Epicenter International Missions Ministry was founded in 2004 by Jeremy Evgene. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's a ranch employee. It has no building, no congregation, and no ordained clergy. Evgene acknowledged in a September 18th court deposition that, quote, it is not a real church, it is just a ministry. I don't think that was what was intended in the law. I recently met a gentleman that was a resident at Ranch for Kids, and he tells me that he was sexually assaulted by another resident at the facility. He also tells me that he was physically abused by William Sutley, ranch manager. None of these things have been resolved. Pinehaven has also been on the news on a regular basis because of abuse happening to youth at the facility. One of the longtime staff, Ned Kent, admitted on public television on CNN that he would often hold children in the air off their feet in a chokehold he learned in the military. He would use this as discipline for both boys and girls. He says he no longer engages in this practice, not because he's sorry, not because he believes he is wrong, but because others didn't like it. Many of the former youth have been very brave to come out and talk about their experiences of abuse in these facilities. Their cries should no longer be ignored. Thank you for your time and consideration, and please support House Bill 236.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Further proponents, House Bill 236. Could I see some show of hands on the proponents? Okay. Please move your testimony along, and if you have written testimony, submit it for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Beth Brenneman, Brenneman, and I have some written testimony that'll, I think, supplement what I'm going to say. Our organization was created to address abuse and neglect of people with disabilities in institutional care. It's Disability Rights Montana, and we were created by Congress in the 1970s, and there's one like us in every state that goes into institutions to make sure that people, first with developmental disabilities, then a couple years later, people with mental illness, are not abused or neglected. And one of the things that we participated in the last couple of sessions was the work on a passage of this particular regulation of these private facilities. And one of the reasons we thought it was important, I mean, obviously these aren't only for kids with disabilities, but we know that a lot of the kids that end up in these facilities are in crisis. A lot of them have undiagnosed mental illness, undiagnosed cognitive impairments, and a lot of them have co-occurring drug addiction already. It's really not that uncommon for kids with bipolar disorder before they're diagnosed to use drugs and alcohol to control their symptoms. So we wanted to make sure that when the program or when the board wrote its rules, that it identified those kids to make sure that they didn't inadvertently fall through the cracks. And so one of the things that the board did, and we were really very happy about that, is to put in screening requirements for suicide. Also requirements that people be trained on restraint techniques. There have been some horrific string of deaths in psychiatric institutions of children that were restrained in inappropriate ways. I think that some of us use common sense, and common sense is not so sensible a lot of the times. Laying upon a child, even when he's 15 or 16, can cause, and that kind of prone restraint can cause him to asphyxiate and die within a very short period of time. So we wanted to make sure that health and safety rules were put in place by the board, and they did a really quite good job. And I want to assure you that there were really no discussions about dictating curriculum or any other sort of aspect of the programs that would be religious in nature. These are strictly safety and health regulations. And to those of you who might be concerned about constitutional issues, there are none. I provided some case sites for you. Most of the litigation has been in child care specific circumstances, but there is no burden upon religious freedom if the state enacts only health and safety regulations that are applied equally and don't impact the ministerial purpose of the program. So that you may hear a little bit about RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That doesn't apply as to state entities, and since it was passed, it doesn't apply in these particular circumstances. The courts have found that the state has a compelling state interest in the health and safety of children, and that compelling interest eliminates any sort of ability to claim that there should be religious freedom for programs not to comply with such regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brenneman. Further proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Matt Kuntz. It's K-U-N-T-Z. I'm the executive director for NAMI Montana, and we rise in support of this bill. We work with families across Montana that are in crisis with their children, and it's really, really hard to help your child get help when you're in the midst of a behavioral crisis and it gets beyond what you can care for. And I can tell you, I deal with some very smart families, very sophisticated members of the community that are good parents that spend a ton of money on treatment, hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get their kids the help that they need. And we do believe that if your child is religious, if you're spiritual, you should try to make sure that their treatment lines up with your belief system, because it's going to work better. But I do think that just for the sake of buyer beware and ensuring that people get their money's worth, we do need health and safety regulations for any institution that's going to be caring for at-risk kids. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. Further proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Sarah Corbally, Corbally. I'm the administrator for the Child and Family Services Division, and I'm here today in support of House Bill 236. So I just want to explain for this committee exactly how the department, Child and Family Services, fits into this and why under the current sort of framework without licensing, there is nothing that we can do in situations that arise like this. I obviously can't talk about specific cases because that would be confidential, so I will just talk about the process in general. The centralized intake hotline does receive reports on these types of unlicensed facilities, and there are many, you heard, and we do receive many reports on them. So the standard protocol is then to assign them for an investigation, and one of our workers will go out and complete an investigation, because these people do meet the statutory definition of persons responsible for the welfare of a child in a residential setting. Once the investigation is complete, however, the worker has the option of basically deciding that the report is substantiated, unsubstantiated, or unfounded. And I will tell you that there are reports that are substantiated. So the worker finds abuse or neglect. The worker can then, if it's serious enough, remove a child from that situation. However, at the time of removal, the people who are named are the parents. There is no recourse against the facility or the person who works at the facility who actually abused or neglected that child. The substantiation may be against that person. However, that is entirely confidential. Nobody would ever know about that substantiation against that person. If they were to try to work at a licensed facility where they did a background check, it would come up and prevent them from working in a licensed facility. But there are no rules or regulations that prevent them from continuing to work at this facility, even after my agency has substantiated abuse or neglect against them. And I can tell you that there are situations and facilities where we have multiple ongoing substantiations, and there's absolutely nothing further that can be done by our agency in those situations. And like I said, then once these children are removed, the case is filed against the parents. The parents have to often show up in court, and then, they can be resolved by the parents removing them from that facility. However, it doesn't address the ongoing issues at that facility. And for this, as a different example to show you what licensing does, there was a fairly high-profile case in Missoula that you likely read about in a daycare, a licensed daycare. And so in those sorts of, with the child left in the van. And so in those sorts of situations, licensing is able to go in and shut down a facility. However, in these situations, there is nothing like that can be done. And so for the sake of keeping children in Montana safe, regardless of where they may live, we would urge a do pass on House Bill 236. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbally. Further proponents, House Bill 236. Seeing none, opponents, House Bill 236. Opponents?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think the person, I've been communicating with your secretary. The next witness up has a PowerPoint. If we get the projector going and everything, it'll be warmed up if he comes up second.
Okay.
We were planning on him coming up first. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Jeff Laszloffy, L-A-S-Z-L-O-F-F-Y, with the Montana Family Foundation. And we rise in opposition to House Bill 236. We understand the motivation behind the bill, and I think that everybody in this room has that same motivation to keep kids safe. The problem is there's some challenges with this bill. Like they say, the devil's in the details, and we see several challenges. First of all, I believe that the premise behind the bill before you is that somehow the state, with all of its authority, can create safer conditions for children than the private sector can. I think that we've heard that. If we just had state regulation, the state could get at these programs, the state could help the kids, and the state could do a better job, maybe in some instances, than the private home is itself. What I'd like to do first is submit, and I'll make a copy of this for the members of the committee. We had the Legislative Audit Division pull a report for us for violent incidents at Pine Hills and Riverside facilities for the year 2012. Remember, in all of these circumstances, or in many of these circumstances, we're dealing with adolescents that have challenges. And some things like incidents of violence or abuse are, I guess you could say, they go along with the territory. These are the types of children that we deal with, and they have challenges controlling their emotions. But at the state-run facilities, the women's facility, adolescent facility at Riverside, and the facility for males at Pine Hills, just in the year 2012, number of youth charged with assault on staff, no injury, 21, injury to staff, 22, number of youth charged with assault on a youth, no injury, 52, with injury, 16. And the number of employees, interestingly, we talked about somebody that was restraining a youth excessively. The number of employees disciplined for excessive use of force at a state facility, Pine Hills, we had one of those too. So I would argue or I would say that the argument that the state does this better than the private sector is at least suspect. The state certainly doesn't, with its ability to regulate these types of facilities, get rid of all of the challenges that are inherent in dealing with these types of kids. Now, I'd like to set that aside. I think that's important, and like I said, I'll make a copy of that for the committee. I don't think that that's the most important point here. The most important point are the constitutional issues. And with all deference to Ms. Brenneman, who I really enjoy working with, I remember back in, I think it was 2001, in this committee room, that session we had 7 lawyers on this committee. And I can distinctly remember one bill where all 7 lawyers had a different opinion. And so, in my opinion, this bill does have some huge constitutional issues that you need to consider. And as I said, the devil's in the details. You see what they're trying to do in the bill itself, but remember, this is going to be administered through administrative rule. We just testified on a hearing about 2 months ago at the Department of Labor where they want to change the definition of adjunct ministry. And that's what we're talking about here in the bill. You'll see it in the title. And the list of in the definitions, they come up with several requirements to meet the term adjunct ministry that absolutely trample on the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. As far as those constitutional challenges go, we see 2 major ones. The first is an establishment clause issue. In our opinion, the state is telling the church what constitutes a true church youth home, saying in effect that if a church youth home is owned by a single church, then it's a church youth home. But if it's owned by many churches or a denomination, then it's not, I guess, quote, churchy enough, for lack of a better phrase. That's a problem. Also, the second problem deals with the free exercise clause. If you have a youth home that claims to be a Christian youth home, and has a statement of faith that says that its doctrine is consistent with the doctrine of a certain faith, and it holds itself out as a church-based ministry and takes no governmental funding whatsoever, and the government comes in and says that you have to do things our way, or in this case, adhere to our administrative rules, then that creates a First Amendment free exercise problem. It's important for you, the members of the Judiciary Committee, to understand that the courts have different standards of review depending on the subject and the facts in the case. The most difficult standard for the state to meet is called strict scrutiny. To meet strict scrutiny, the state has to show that it has a compelling interest. Not only does it have to have a compelling interest, but it also has to show that the law is narrowly tailored to that interest. Narrow tailoring means using the least restrictive means possible to achieve the goal. And when you provide exemptions, as Montana has in this case, then it becomes extremely difficult to prove that the case is narrowly tailored, that the law is narrowly tailored, As in this case, when you have a free exercise claim and the state is granting exemptions, that law is automatically subject to the strict scrutiny test, and it's very hard for the government to pass that test. In closing, I'd just like to encourage the board to move cautiously. We've been involved in 2 of these types of cases in recent years. We prevailed in both of them. And I suppose one was Canyon Ferry Road Baptist Church v. Unsworth. In that case, the state of Montana lost, and they wound up paying $250,000 in legal fees. I just want to leave you with a short quote from that decision. This was out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it explains why we're involved in this bill today. The court said, quote, "What has happened here is that a small congregation, in this case maybe one youth ranch, has been put to trouble and expense in order to exercise its right to speak on an issue seen by it to be of vital religious significance. One lesson of history is that small incursions on freedom are to be resisted lest they grow greater. Even though the changes that have been suggested to you would only affect a small number of youth homes, in our opinion, the changes would have enormous constitutional problems that would set a precedent. And it's for that reason that we ask you to reject House Bill 236. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laszloffy. Further proponents? Excuse me, opponents? David, can you drop the shades? I think we've got a PowerPoint here.
Can we turn off the lights?
And lights.
Very good. It's getting better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for watching and listening and considering this very important question about what's best for the kids. And that's what it's all about. So I've been asked to share with you a PowerPoint.
Could we have your name, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Robert Larson, Larson. I'm a Christian church minister, and I'm the director of the Pinehaven Christian Children's Ranch in St. Ignatius, Montana. So I'm going to move very quickly here, and you can ask me all kinds of questions later, but I've been told that even though you're a preacher, you're limited in time, and I understand that. And so let me just take you quickly to Pinehaven and show you some of the things that are going on there. Apparently this isn't working. I'll have to hit the button, and I can do that. Okay, we're in beautiful western Montana. This is a scene. The foreground is on the ranch, the beautiful Mission Mountains. We've been going for 36 years and more since we opened our doors, and we have built everything that you're seeing here that's man-made on the side of Pinehaven Mountain. There's no indebtedness. If we don't have the money, we don't spend it. We don't charge anything to anybody, state or individuals, for caring for the kids. The kids aren't living in dormitories. They're living in large ranch houses like this. This is a large Montana or Pinehaven family with house parents there in the middle, and the house dad for that family is with us this morning. And these are usually, there's 6 boys and 6 girls. One of those boys is going to testify to you because he has now graduated after being 11 years in the Pinehaven program, and he'll be one of our first ones to tell you from the inside what it's really like at Pinehaven. I said no dorms, bedrooms where they can live more like normal kids. Instead of having dining halls and cafeterias, we have big kitchens where the kids are learning how to cook and help the parents. They sit down together 3 times a day as a family around a great big dining table and share. This was Thanksgiving of this last year. This is the Pinehaven Schoolhouse. Many of the kids that come to us are behind in their studies, either not motivated or in some cases just haven't had enough help, whatever. This is one of our classes, one of our teachers. Our teachers are well qualified and have, many cases, years of experience. We're trying to be as up to date as we can with computer technology. We have a working shop with woodworking tools and other things that the kids can learn how to work with their hands. The Bible says, let the one who stole steal no more, but let them work with their hands that they might have that which is good. Our kids are exposed to a lot of different scenarios that will help them when they go out to seek employment or look at their future life. Our kids have learned how to build, how to pour concrete, and to build and work with our staff on the buildings there at the ranch. One of our large buildings, the largest, is a schoolhouse, has a basketball floor or volleyball, whatever you want to do. When the weather's a little cold, they can play inside. We have an archery range that the kids can use and do, And it is heated, like most of our buildings, with wood-fired furnaces or boilers, wood that we cut on the ranch. When the weather's nice, we can play out in what used to be one of our pastures. And we have an indoor heated swimming pool that we built ourselves. We had some special gifts, and we did the work, and this is heated, water and air, with wood and a wood-fired boiler. We even have our own dentist. He comes up and volunteers his work maybe a couple times a month at no charge whatsoever. I mentioned this with the swimming pool because this room is in the lower unit of where the swimming pool is. We really look forward to helping these kids to a goal in life. And when they come to us, most of their parents say, I don't think my kid's ever going to graduate from anything. And it's a miracle to them to come and see in graduation time, the last Sunday of May or the 1st of June, the kids get their diplomas, which they have earned. And they are accepted in the military and colleges and universities over the country. The one boy, third from the left, is the one who's going to talk to you here in a little bit. These two girls came to us years ago when they were 10 and 12 from Kentucky, or well, southern Indiana. And that is not their mother. Their mother was convicted of a lot of crimes, and she spent a lot of time behind bars. I was called and said, we have two girls that need help. Can you take them? I said, we're full. They told me the circumstances, 10 and 12. Mom going to prison. I said, we'll make room. Both girls have now graduated from college. The one on the right graduated with a full-ride scholarship because of her academics from Montana State University and is now a certified teacher in the state of Montana. Many of them have gone into the military. This boy was with us a long time. He came from a failed adoption. His sister by him, his big sister, his older sister, worked with him and his family. But he finally graduated at 19 and was accepted into the military. People make a big point about what is our discipline. Folks, you're looking at it. That is not just dirt. Our cows produce an unending supply of discipline material. And there's chores that have to be done. You that are ranchers say, that shouldn't be punishment. We do it every day. Well, you save the more onerous chores for something. And when a child is mouthy, cheating, lying, physical, disrespectful, a number of things, he or she finds herself down here at what we call the bullpen, shoveling you-know-what. This is a cattle ranch, a working kid and cattle ranch. We have as many as 130 head when you count everything at maximum, and the kids like to work with those calves. They'll soon be having some new baby calves, and the kids will be out putting in ear tags and playing with them. This is our milking barn. We build it into the hill, and ground heat keeps the milking parlor from needing any heat. It never gets down to freezing there. Every morning and evening, the kids bring in 5 or 6 cows, and they're learning how to milk. Every kid has 2 milking machines, right and left. When we need some meat, we fatten up some of our steers. We butcher them. The kids participate in that. We hang them in our walk-in cooler till they're aged, and then they participate in the cutting of the meat. We teach them skills of gun handling and safe gun handling. Several of our staff are certified instructors. I'm one of them. The shirt I'm wearing was given me by the state a year ago for having taught the kids of our community for 55 years. We believe in the kids learning how to safely use these and having the opportunity to get out in Montana's beautiful outdoors, and they've been very successful through the years. In fact, a couple of years ago, one of the girls shot an elk, a cow elk. I said, honey, how far did you have to drag it to the pickup? She said, about 2 miles. Her and another girl in the house, Dad. I said, but was it uphill or downhill? And she said, yes. We get a lot of firewood as we thin our woods so it will work better and grow timber faster. We've been given a sawmill, a horizontal bandsaw, and we take the larger logs and make them into lumber and use them in building projects for the ranch and up at a church camp at Lake Mary Ronan that my wife and I started back in 1955. And the kids learn how to really do something worthwhile. They can take this cabin from the concrete to having the roof on in about 6 days. And it's been home for 2 families during family camp. Lake Mary Ronan is a jewel. The kids get good outdoor recreation. They catch a lot of fish. They get to do some tubing around the lake, and they get a lot of good religious instruction. We do not apologize one bit for being a church-run facility. We believe that there is God in heaven. He's the creator of everything, and he made the rules for living. Jesus Christ is the Son of God, we believe. We know it because of the resurrection that we believe in. And we believe that the Bible is the Word of God. We also believe that America is still the greatest country on the face of the earth, and we teach patriotism and the respect for our flag. We have about 16 or 18 horses. That's too many when you go to feed them. But when it comes to roundup time and other times in the year, the kids love to go riding. They go all over the ranch. It's 1,120 acres. For some of you eastern Montanans, that's a postage stamp. But for us, it's what we need to work with these kids. They bring them into the corrals, and the kids become calf doggers. And they put themselves right into it. Would you say that boy has a drug problem? They put themselves right into it in every way. Finally, every calf gets caught and held and branded, and the girls step in to vaccinate. I don't want them coming at me with those needles. They, of course, in the summer, have to be out in our fields putting up hay and developing strong bodies and good work ethics. They like to show me how they can lift a bale and throw it up on a wagon. They're proud of that. And then they know that comes winter, they'll have something to feed the cows. Every spring, about the 1st of June, we put in a big garden. And the kids say when they get to have their own home, they're going to produce food for their own table in that way. It isn't all work and study. We have times for playing time. We go to a water slide up by Columbia Falls once a year, and we spend the whole day, and we spend a lot of money buying tickets for everybody to have a good time. They call that the Geronimo. I have never been down it, and I don't plan to be. In the late summer, we often take backpacking trips up into the wilderness area, and the kids love to set up camp by a mountain lake where they can catch some of Montana's beautiful cutthroat trout, and they can build a fire. They can gather their own firewood and cook their, burn their own food. Now, when they can't go in the woods because of fire danger, we take them to the river. And first we train them in what to do if your canoe upsets by doing it in the swimming pool. And then we're not that far from the Flathead River. And they spend some days just going down the river, catching smallmouth bass and rainbow trout and German brown trout, and then looking forward to the time we're going to have some snow on the ranch. They don't think we have enough this year. I can't do anything about that. But they did go just this last week up to Glacier Park, where the park rangers show them how to survive in snow situations and give them snowshoes to run on. Christmas, what can I say? All kids like Christmas. But the kids tell us that they never thought they'd have a Christmas like this. They said they thought that was only on television. And they are appreciative about this. All of what we have is provided by Christian people who believe in the program, many of whom have visited the ranch and been on it. One aspect of the work we have that I particularly appreciate is our ministry to unwed mothers. The girl that had this baby while she was at Pinehaven said if she hadn't heard of Pinehaven, she would have had an abortion, and that little gal would never have opened her eyes. Look how little that hand is coming up out of the hand of this little baby, 3 days old. The big hands are by people who have legally come to adopt her with a mother's desire. That's that same little girl today, and I appreciate the opportunity to be pro-life. I think children are the treasure at the end of all of our rainbows. I'm almost done, but look at the faces. This is what it's all about. You'll hear a lot about regulations and different things, but this is what it is. Little children who love their Redeemer are the jewels, precious jewels, his loved and his own. And so we invite you to come to western Montana and visit Pinehaven. visit kids who are engaged in an active ministry of shaping their lives, teaching them how to work, giving them a chance to finish their high school education, go into the military. This boy came back, one of our boys, and told the others what it's great to be a Marine. And both of those boys, I think, now are in the military. Oftentimes, kids come back and want to show their children where they got the help they had. And they said, we're raising our kids like you raised us. It is a church-sponsored program. Every Sunday, the kids are in church on Wednesday nights through the school year, and they get to go to church camp. And many of them make a commitment of their lives. We would never force that and couldn't on anybody. And they ask if they can be baptized into Jesus Christ. Scripture says pure religion is caring for the fatherless. Many of our kids are in one way or another fatherless. At Pinehaven, they have fathers and they have mothers. So keep this one picture in your mind. This is a girl who was so deeply troubled, her family had given up on her. She came to Pinehaven, and she changed her life and is living a productive, happy life today. I ask you to not pass this bill. And one of the main reasons is what Jeff referred to. We believe strongly in the Constitution. And the Constitution was the thing that our forefathers put together. And after they had used it a few years, they decided it needed some amendments, some adding. And the first one they put in was, the government shall pass no restriction on the free exercise of religion. If pure religion is caring for the fatherless, then we believe that is unconstitutional. We have other reasons as well. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have with me today several of our staff. I'm going to ask them to stand. You can just see who they are. These are people who have dedicated their lives to coming and working. Sure, we have some people occasionally who decide they don't agree with everything the way it's done. You know, I know even husbands and wives don't always agree 100%. And Jesus was the master of all knowledge and everything, and he chose 12 to follow him. One of them betrayed him, and the other denied him. There will always be the naysayers, but we keep doing what we believe to be right, God-given right, scriptural, and the privilege here in America. I will be available for questions, but I would like to get a copy of whatever was handed out to the committee. If you have any extra copies of any of those handouts, I'd like to see them so I know what you're seeing and what you've been given. We have given each committee member a folder with a number of brochures. Every 3 months, we mail out to our supporters one of these that has pictures of what's going on at the ranch. And on the back page are letters of testimony from satisfied families and parents and kids and visitors who have been to the ranch. If you don't want to take my word for it, look at the witnesses, how many of them there are that actually know what's going on. And sure, some people will get tired and leave, and it's a very difficult ministry. But these are the heroes. These are the ones who stayed on for the long haul. The number of total years of service of those you saw stand here is close to 200 years that they've invested of their lives into this ministry that they believe in and still believe in, and are still there. None of them are offering to leave that I know of. They haven't told me if they are. But and we have about that many years represented in the people we left at home to continue taking care of these kids while we made this trek to Helena. And we are glad that this is a country where we can consider these things by law. References are made to newspaper stories. I don't think anybody here believes everything you read in a newspaper, because they have their own agenda. And we have detractors, and I can answer questions about those, but I didn't come to attack anybody. I came to show you the good things that are happening in Pinehaven. We have had kids referred to, and I have the documentation with me, by a Department of Family Services workers. And one lady, I can show you, she'd rather her name wasn't used, but she was open, said, I placed 3 of my own children in Pinehaven, Department of Family Services worker. She said, and it's one of the best parenting decisions I have ever made. and she lived close enough to know what was going on. The thought that some of these people don't have any opportunity to get on telephone and tell their folks what's going on is not true at Pinehaven. And folks can come and visit their kids, and they do. And we have a couple of ladies here who will testify in a little bit that they live up near Pablo, about 20 miles away, and they voluntarily come down to church almost every Sunday so they can sit by, this grandmother can sit by her grandson. Nobody's there telling him what to say or monitoring. And the other is the boy's aunt. They've come today to share with you their experiences. I thank you. I would like to call on one of our graduates. I say this boy, young man now, has been with us for 11 years. He's now a student at the University of Montana.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Just a quick break before we proceed on with the next witness. The next bill we have scheduled, House Bill 438, is Representative Balance in the room here? Have we had people travel from all over the state to hear your bill? Or if we put it off till tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, is that an incredibly inconvenient thing to do? We will proceed then. We will proceed. We ask everyone to be respectful of the time we have because we need to be on the House floor at 1 o'clock. With that, for the testimony, opponents, House Bill 236.
Mr. Chairman, representatives, my name is Corey Green, Green.
Get that microphone, bend it straight up. There you go. Thank you.
I came to the ranch when I was 7 years old, and because my family was having issues with each other, and they just couldn't take time to take care of me, and I was very troubled, and I was going places with the wrong people and starting to go down the wrong path. When I went to Pinehaven, they were showing me what a Christian family is like, what a true family is, that most kids nowadays, even me being in Missoula, the little time I have, can see that most kids do not have that type of family. Ones that are loving and caring, and when you get doing things that you can't do, if you have rules on those that you need to be disciplined for it in ways that teach you cannot be doing this. I do not regret any time I was there. I would honestly be telling people at school right now that I would still rather be there than out in Missoula, being a college kid and seeing exactly what is out there in the world. Pinehaven does show kids through outside of Montana also. I know there's been kids coming from Illinois, Kentucky, all over this country, and they come here and they are in bad positions in life of wrong paths, doing drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. And they come to the ranch and they're in a place where they are away from that, and they can actually be a normal kid and learn how to do chores, have responsibility, and do some fun stuff on the side. And I wrote a letter to the ranch about 4 months ago, and I'd just like to read that. I want to thank you for giving your life to God and helping the kids that come to the ranch like me, a kid that has no hope and was lost to the world. The ranch is one of the best things that happened to me. It has given me a chance to learn the truth and to follow God. It also gave me the chance to turn my life from the wrong path I was going down to the right one that ultimately leads to eternal life and not death. If I had not come to the ranch, my life would be in a mess still, or I would possibly be dead. I know that Satan had a hold of me when I was little and was all around me. Being allowed to come to a place that gives the opportunity to see what a family really is, and where there is not so much of the world. The ranch has made it possible for young kids like me to be able to have a life where they do not have to worry what is going to happen to us. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to come to Pinehaven when I did, because through God, you saved me. There is no way that if I had not come there, I would be able to move to college, let alone finish high school. I thank you and the staff members for taking kids you do not even know and treating them like your own sons and daughters. I know that for me, I can never call anywhere but Pinehaven home because my heart will always be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to allow 10 more minutes for opponents, and then we're going to move into the next phase. So opponents, House Bill 236.
My name is Steve Heimbach. I'm from Weevil, Montana, which is about 500 miles from here. I told people I was coming over here today, and they said, "What are you coming over for?" And my response always is, "Just for freedom." And I didn't plan to come and testify on this bill, but I understand that freedom is going away from us fast, and it takes little steps like this all the time, and so I want to rise in opposition to this bill, House Bill 236, and thank you for that consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Heimbach. Further opponents? House Bill 236.
For the record, I'm Travis Butcher, that's spelled B-U-T-C-H-E-R, from Winifred, Montana. I'm here in opposition to HB 236. I had the unique experience. My wife and I spent a winter at Pinehaven as relief house parents, helping them out. We had the opportunity to be in every single home, work with all of the staff and all of the kids that winter. And I have to say, without a doubt, it was an incredibly positive experience for us. And we saw young men like Corey, who were ready to graduate, literally sharing the experiences they had there and the incredible turnarounds they'd had in their lives. Kids that were coming in multiple years behind in school that were caught up and able to graduate under very stringent, high standards of academics. We also, as staff, had the opportunity every single day to communicate with the staff the standards of conduct of both the staff and the students were outstanding, and the accountability between everybody there was also remarkable. We were surprised at the extreme lengths that had been gone to in their programs to ensure that there would be a high level of accountability. The one thing I'd really like to emphasize is, again, these children are not wards of the state of Montana. These are individual parents who have decided that they need this for their children. They're not wards of the state. And the second point that I'd really like to make to this committee is there's not a single taxpayer's dollar being spent at this facility. These are individual donations. So for the state to have oversight for those reasons is also impractical. Compared to the other facilities that we've seen across the state that are state-run, this is far and beyond above it, and the transparency and the conduct that there is far and above beyond that. Thank you. I know the time's very limited, and I'll be here if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Further opponents, House Bill 236.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Janae Butcher. I'm from Winifred, Montana. I'm 11 years old, and I oppose this bill because there's I oppose this bill, and I please ask that you would vote no on House Bill 236.
Thank you, Ms. Butcher. Start them early in that family. Further opponents.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Josh Butcher. I am 18 years old, and I am from Winifred, Montana. As a rancher, I have a great deal of respect for Pinehaven, and I appreciate the fact that not only do the kids receive good education, but they also receive good life skills. From cooking to swimming to gardening to mechanicking to woodworking, raising animals to milking cows. They leave the ranch with the work ethic and skills to succeed in life. While we were at Pinehaven that winter, we made many friendships that are still strong to today. For these reasons and many others that have been stated, I strongly urge a negative vote on House Bill 236. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. For their opponents, we'll allow about 10 more minutes on the opponents.
Mr. Chair, committee, my name is Adam Houghton, Houghton. I have an interesting perspective on this, I think. At age 17, I took an oath to protect the Constitution of our nation as a soldier, and at age 24, I did so as a police officer in Louisville, Kentucky. I spent 29 years working in government. I am more jaded about government's involvement sometimes than some of the proponents have voiced. I left my position as a police officer in Louisville, Kentucky. As a Christian, I worked within an organization that was not Christian. I felt that I had limitations to express my faith within that environment. It was an excellent career. However, 17 years before I made that decision, I started coming out as a member of my church working on the ranch. My wife and I came out and worked during the summers, every summer, never missed a summer. When my children were old enough, my children began coming with me, and just about 4.5 years ago, my family moved out there. I'm currently serve as a physical education teacher on the ranch and driver's education teacher. And to 2 points that I would make very quickly. In the 20 years, 4.5, almost 5, that I've been an employee and working on the ranch, and the 17 prior as a volunteer coming with my church, never once did I see something that has been mentioned. I can't obviously say that I was present 24 hours a day, every day, but never once. And the people that have been spoken about here are good friends, and they're good friends because of the character I've seen. In addition to that, I would like to say that as far as being a church organization, I counted on my computer, my work computer in my classroom. I have 148 sermons that I've written sitting at my desk and that I've delivered to the children as a course of my duties in chapel and in other times. It is absolutely Christian, absolutely part of this church, and I left government because I felt the limitations that presented for me in the faith that I hold. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Further opponents? About 5 minutes remain.
Hi there, Mr. Chairman and representatives. Thank you for this time. My name is Deanne Haynes, and I live in Ronan, and I attend the church, First Christian Church, with these folks here. I am one of the students at Pinehaven's aunt, and this is my mother, his grandmother. And he's been at the ranch for 4.5 years. And I'm here to tell you that I'm an RN with the state of Montana, and any concerns about health and safety, I see no concerns there. My nephew has had some issues with bee allergies and different injuries, and they take better care of him than I would have myself. EpiPen goes with them wherever they go. They go on hikes and backcountry excursions. So I have no concerns there. I've met a lot of the other children. I've gotten a chance to know them. I've seen them excel and go forward with dreams and go on to college and achieve really awesome things. My nephew has huge dreams, and he's excelling in school, and he's doing very well. He's a leader in that school. So I just want to say that I can't speak for other entities, but Pinehaven Ranch, I fully commit my trust to them with a very loved child. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Further opponents?
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you. I am currently a house dad at Pinehaven. I can tell you 100%.
Name?
J.C. Crone, I'm sorry, C-R-O-A-N. This is not an institution. I tell everybody quite frequently, I do not work for Bob Larson. I do not work for Pinehaven. I serve the Lord. If that wasn't the case, I would not be here. I came from a boys' ranch in Kentucky. I read about this through a church in Kentucky. Came out and visited. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed the people. The people I live with, they're not employees. They are people. They're my friends. They're my family. The children that are there are not numbers. They are my kids. They sit at my dinner table. I am with them 24 hours a day, sick, healthy, we're a family. And we also have their family as families. They communicate with their families on a weekly basis with phone calls. Some come to church that are local. Some come out and visit during the summer with church groups. It's a family, and it is all under the church and then supported by the church and churches throughout the country. And if that wasn't the case, then that wouldn't be. So the allegations that I've heard in the 3 years that I've been here, completely false. I have never, in 3 years of being here, and I came in as an outsider, have never seen anything wrong at this facility. This is a wonderful place, and it is solely for the children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Crone. 2 minutes remain.
My name is Elvin Lamb, L-A-M-B. I was born and raised, spent most of my life in Indiana. In 1989, I first heard of Pinehaven Christian Children's Ranch. In 1991, I came out to visit, and in 2000, I moved out here to work full-time. Between 1991 and my move in 2000, I visited the ranch as much as 3 times a year. Before I ever actually became an employee of the ranch, I already had 16 months of time spent working for the ranch as a volunteer. I knew some young people from my hometown of Noblesville, Indiana, who had come to Pinehaven, who had gotten in trouble with the law, and I realized the change that was made in them. A couple of them, I knew their families, and realized how much good this experience at Pinehaven was doing them, and how they did manage to get their lives straightened out, graduate high school, and become a productive member of society. I spent most of my life making a living as a carpenter, so I've done a lot of construction work at Pinehaven. I also play the piano, and I've been able to teach some students, give them piano lessons. I teach shop, do several things at the ranch. I think I'll call it right there.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Our time is essentially expired, but step up, state your name, and 1 minute or 1 sentence either way.
There you go. All right. My name is Chuck Swenson, S-W-E-N-S-O-N, and I'm here opposed to House Bill 236. Just real quick, I'm coming from a kind of a totally different perspective, from business. I've been reasonably successful my entire life because I focus on customer service, okay? When I tell people, do it right every time to the best of your ability, so that when the inevitable mistake happens, it's the exception, not the rule. And that's what I see. I know I've met all the people that were here. At one time, I go to First Christian Church in Lewistown. A lot of them sneak over that way to do a little hunting once a year. And I know some of their relatives who are in that church. What I see is 36 years of a successful program. If there have been something not quite right, it's been the exception. I don't think the way you regulate or what you take care of those exceptions is by regulation. It's just by your system works. We don't need to fix it just because there isn't anything there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just come up, state your name in 1 sentence, and then we're going to move to the next.
My name's Laura Silgan, and as my daughter said, we both go to church there now that my grandson's there. And I just want to add to what she said that we do see my grandson every Sunday. We get to have him 1 day a month out, and nothing bad has ever been said. He's a happy boy. And I wanted to say one thing about the gentleman that said, you know, people spend lots of money on trying to fix their kids. My son asked my grandson one day, why does Pinehaven work for you and it didn't at my house? And he said, I don't want to go to the bullpen. And it's taught him life lessons. And he's upstanding, and he's going to be great for the society instead of a menace. Thank you.
Last opponent. 30 seconds.
My name is William Sutley. I'm the ranch manager with the Ranch for Kids, and I obviously don't have time to even share maybe a 5-minute speech, but I certainly oppose this bill, not only because it would put our ministry out of business, but I have some very legitimate reasons for not being licensed on the program that is sort of the exception. And so if anyone would like to know those, would like to speak to me, I will be available. I would just like to say that the existing legislation is imperfect, and I think we need to address that. And so
You can submit written testimony, we can make it part of the record. If you have notes there, that's fine. We can copy it and put it in the record.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there informational witnesses?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the committee, my name is Jocelyn Hunt. I am an attorney with the Department of Labor and Industry, and specifically the board counsel for the PARP board. And I'm here just to let you know, currently there are 3 schools that are claiming the exemption as adjunct ministries. One of that ministry in particular, the board has spent extensive time and money litigating whether they do in fact qualify as an adjunct ministry. And as you've heard just a couple weeks ago, a district court ruled that that entity, that school, does not qualify as an adjunct ministry, and they must seek licensure for the safety of the children who live there 24 hours a day. From a public health and safety standpoint, the licensure ensures that the staff that are employed there have training in physical restraint, suicide prevention, medical and emergency protocols, and also are not convicted felons for physical or sexual crimes. And one other point of clarification that I just wanted to provide the committee, and this House Bill 236 talks about removing the exemption for adjunct ministry. You have heard that the board has sought to define adjunct ministries through an administrative rule process, and that process is ongoing because we do not have a definition. But if this exemption is removed, that rule process, they do not, the statute and the rules do not go together. They are, the statute is not administered through the rule. Just to point out that piece of clarification, and I have more information about the rule process should the committee desire it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Further informational witnesses? Seeing none. Questions from the committee? And we'll take one question, and that's it. So make it a good one.
I have a question.
Representative Smith?
Chairman, for Mr. Robert Larson? Larson? I just want, Chairman Larson, it looked like a lovely facility. However, I did hear you reference to the children having emotional problems at times, and you did reference to them mouthy, cheating, and lying. And so I wondered what your discipline practice is.
Thank you.
And what is the bullpen then?
Bullpen is just the place where a part of the ranch, small field, where we keep the bull, the dairy bull, and some of the cows, and where they bring the manure out from the milking barn, and then it's dumped there, and then it's loaded into the honey wagon and spread on the garden.
Okay.
And that's what that is. And as far as what is effective discipline, that's a great question. Anytime we get a solid answer that'll take care of every child at every stage of their life, I want to see it. I want to read the book, because the best book is God's Word. But there are questions in daily living. We have to come to a point of modifying behavior, or the kids wouldn't be with us. They come because they've lost respect for authority. The folks didn't have any consequences for what they were doing. And we don't take the choir boy, A student off the street and put them in. Every kid must ask to come and write me a letter and say why, and agree and understand what the program is. But you only have a few ways to modify behavior. One of them is rewards. Another one is consequences. Another one is to live an example before them that they have something to look up to. We try to follow all 3. We had an extended meeting in staff every Monday morning. Generally, we have a staff meeting. And this last Monday, some of the staff members said, we have a real problem with about 3 of these little boys, 8, 9, 10 years old, and said, they just say, I won't do it, and you can't make me. What are you going to do about it? Well, we don't spank. We don't use any inflicting pain on a kid to discipline him. You've heard it said that one of the men choked. That word has been recanted by the man who made the charge. I have it in print here. He said, I was wrong when I used that word. He was holding the kid. He was restraining him. He was not choking him. And that word keeps going out like feathers from a pillow that's been opened, and you try to get them all back in. People still, like this morning, I was surprised to still hear that word. We would not condone that in any way, and it has never happened to my knowledge, and I'm pretty well on top of what's going on I've been there since I started it 36 and more years ago.
Thank you.
But here, just one thing on. I know I'm going a little long on on what we did. Here's what we decided: we need an incentive that they haven't had before, and so yesterday, the first day, we implemented a new program. About half hour or so before they're out at 3:30, the kids start to smell hot baked cookies coming from the kitchen at the school, and if they haven't had a discipline problem in the day, they get some big cookies and a glass of cold milk. And if they haven't, they know why they lost the privilege. And tomorrow is another day, and they can start over. And we've never tried that brand of what should I say, incentives, but hot cookies.
Thank you.
Further single questions, Representative Gursky.
Mr. Chair, actually, thank you for staying up there. I have a question for Mr. Larson.
Mr. Larson.
Mr. Chair.
Try to be brief.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Larson, I guess, it sounds like you have a great program, but I'm wondering about what it is your program would be prevented from doing if you had to seek licensure.
It's opening a door that says that our program is subject to state approval, and if it already is in terms of safety, fire prevention, sanitation, and all that kind of thing. Those are all things we apply. There are already rules and laws against abuse, and we've been investigated by the department for 2 or 3 occasions, and never has it been a substantiated charge. Anybody can charge anything, but it has never been substantiated in 36 plus years that any kid has ever been abused. And in fact, the sheriff of Lake County assigned a sergeant to investigate that charge, and he says there isn't any. I can't find any. But your question, give me the question one more time, and I'll answer it.
I would like to know what would prevent you from working at your program and seeking licensure?
Of course, first of all, I'm an American citizen, and I resent any encroachment on the Constitution. But since the Bible says pure religion is caring for the fatherless, we had a state license. We went there when we started, said we want to do everything right. We were green, we didn't know. And we came to a point where we found the state's mandatory requirements were not biblical, and we could not go with them. And we drew a big X in our license and mailed it back to them and said, we no longer need your license and we will not take your license. They even told us at that time, that's been years ago, we had to let the kids use tobacco if they wanted to. And we couldn't give them certain supervision and things like that. I said, if you're going to enforce that, this meeting's over. We have nothing to talk about.
Representative Lynch, your question?
Okay. We've been there.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
found that the state does reach in on religious principles.
In the interest of time, I'm hoping maybe Ms. Hunt can come back maybe tomorrow or some other time. I'm assuming she's stationed here in Helena just to talk about the licensure and the administrative rules. I did have a quick question for Mr. Larson. And I noticed that the graduation and the diplomas, and that you said that they're recognized by the military, and you have this young gentleman behind you that's in the University of Montana. And I will say I was very impressed with the program. I was just wondering, as far as, is your school certified, or how does that education component work? Is that we've had a lot of discussion about charter schools the last couple of days, and so if you could just clarify how that works for me, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Curriculum. We're using the Alpha Mega Christian-based curriculum out of Tempe, Arizona. And we have, when we started it, we went to our local school board of the county and told her what we were doing and all, and her response was, well, then you're just more of a advanced homeschool, which we fully license. But she said, I'd like to send a bunch of my kids to your school.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Beth Brenneman, please.
Pull that microphone a little closer, too.
Thank
Ms.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Brenneman?
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Are you talking to me yet?
No, different,
I'm sorry,
different,
thank you,
different
Reverend.
witness.
Thank you, committee. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Brenneman, I guess the opponents of the licensure for a facility, a residential facility like this for small children 24/7, have alleged that the state's requirements for licensure were unreasonable, that they were requiring children would have to be able to use tobacco and things like that. And I didn't hear that in your testimony in terms of what is required of these residential facilities where small, vulnerable children are being cared for.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yeah, there is, excuse me, Representative McDonald, there is nothing about tobacco. I think he was referring to prior, something that happened in the past, and I don't know what that would be. But these particular rules have nothing to do with curriculum. They have nothing to do with how the ministry speaks to the children that they serve. It has to do with, of course, sanitation, health, those sorts of things. Also, as I mentioned, the restraint, the screening of kids for multiple things, including suicide risk, as well as their medical screenings. Many things that it sounds like Pinehaven is already doing. So they're practical, responsible rules, and we had a lot of debate about whether or not they were responsible during the writing of the rules, and the programs had a lot of say over what those rules were going to look like.
Representative Pease Lopez.
Mr. Chair, I had a question for William Sutley.
Yes. Yes.
I may have misunderstood, but I heard you say that the passing of this would result in closure of the ranch.
Correct.
Well, could you explain? That's what my question was. Sorry.
Well, because of the judge's decision, that's a real possibility anyway. The judge felt that the state has the right to come in and regulate the safety of children, and that cannot be pretty much insured by a church. And I agree. I think I agree on pretty much everything that the licensure process institutes. There's more that we agree on than we disagree. But again, I didn't have a chance to really share what the concerns are. But we were licensed as a program. We were the first registered in the state. We were the first with a provisionary license. And it's the process of licensure has really, I think, gotten out of hand and has been a detriment to our ability to continue to operate. And I believe that if licensure is a requirement, we can look at economic as well as social issues, but those requirements have escalated to the point where they're unreasonable. Licensing fees, we recognize the purpose of licensure, and I was on board. I was involved in many of the discussions and committees that were in the process of developing the legislation. I was in the governor's office when he signed it. But the problem with it is it has escalated. For instance, if we could just take example, the licensing fees that were originally estimated to be around $1,365.
Try to be brief, please. We're running out of time.
Now those licensing fees are significantly higher. We're talking $12,000 to $16,000 a year, and could go up from there.
Thank you, Representative Eck. We're going to go on to the next question. We've got to learn to answer our questions and ask the questions very briefly, folks. We're running out of time. Another bill. Representative Eck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a point of personal privilege. I am extremely upset about what's happening right now. I don't think there's anything more important than the safety of our children. And we listened to a 20-minute presentation that had very little to do with the topic of this bill. I have two brief questions that I think are critical to ask.
Ask your questions.
That I be able to ask them.
Ask your questions.
The first is for Beth Brenneman, please.
Please be brief, Brett.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eck.
Thank you, Beth. One of the things that we heard about the constitutionality of this was that the strict scrutiny issue, that we must prove that the state has a compelling interest and the law needs to be narrowly tailored. Do you think that there's a compelling interest to protect the safety of the children of our state. And would you answer that piece of it, the constitutional question that was raised by the opponent?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eck, yes, the courts that have ruled upon similar sorts of regulation of childcare have found the state does have a compelling interest, which is what it needs in order to satisfy the strict scrutiny test. I apologize, I didn't go into it as much as Mr. Laszloffy, but this is exactly the kind of compelling state interest that the state does have to make this sort of regulation for religious entities.
Thank
Follow
you.
up.
I also have a question for Sarah Corbally, please. Sarah, we heard from one of the opponents that there have been no substantiated claims of child abuse at Pinehaven. Is that or is not the case? My understanding from you was that that is not the case.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eck, that is information that is confidential under the statute. However, what I did say is there have been investigations of unlicensed facilities that have resulted in substantiations. So there are those cases where that has occurred. I would not be able to specifically say if Pinehaven was one of them.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Certainly follow up.
This was handed out talking about Pine Hills and Riverside, which are state-run facilities, and the deaths, abuses that have been charged against youth and staff. So we have numbers right here. Are numbers even available to the public for these private institutions that we could even compare? Are there any numbers like this available about these children and about the staff?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eck, could I do a little research and get back to you on that within the
Certainly.
next day?
We'll be taking a week before we take action on this anyway. So if you have additional information, please get it to the committee. Representative Court.
A question for Mr. Larson, please, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Larson.
I'm 83 and I don't get up very fast.
I can sympathize with that. Mr. Chair, Mr. Larson, how young do you take the children?
As long as it takes till either they turn 18 or graduate, or we feel that, and the parents together feel that they're
how
ready to
young?
return.
What is the, do you take like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 8-year-olds?
Never taken a 2-year-old. We have taken a few at 4. And they were referred in at least 1 or 2 of the cases by a mental health facility who was counseling the mother and knew of our ministry and recommended Pinehaven for that child.
And then a quick follow-up. Mr. Chair, Mr. Larson, do you get written permission from both parents before they're placed in your facility?
If they have a joint jurisdiction, yes. If one of them has sole jurisdiction, then no. We hope they'll get along together, but
okay, thank you.
we ask for it. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Seeing no further questions on the queue, would the sponsor like to close?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like also to share with this committee, as friends on this committee, that I asked repeatedly to have this bill heard not on the same day of the abolition of the death penalty, and I just want that to be known. I also want to make note that in my presentation today, I never mentioned the name of any specific private treatment program in the state of Montana. I never mentioned the merits of any particular private treatment program. I would also like to note that no private treatment programs in the state of Montana, except for the opposition here today, opposes this bill. So you heard only from one program who opposes this bill, and because of that, we are submitting written testimony for the record from students of that program who are in support of this bill, and we are going to hear, Karen's going to play some audio from one such student. What we are here today is not to talk about the merits of a program. I want you to think about who we heard as the proponents asking you to pass this bill. The very definition of what these programs are is in statute right now in the state of Montana. It is not, it's in professions and occupations, as I said. It's shoved between outfitters and guides and accountants. The very definitions of these programs is defined in our state code as a program, an outdoor residential program that provides structured, private, alternative residential settings for youth who are experiencing emotional, behavior, or learning problems and have a history of failing in academic, social, moral, or emotional developments at home. And so who we heard from, members of the committee, who did we hear from? We heard from the board. The board. that exists by statute from the Department of Labor of the state of Montana, the board, Montana Board of Private Alternative Adolescent Residential Programs. This is a bipartisan board consisting of 5 members who are appointed by the governor and confirmed by our Senate. The board of these programs, codified by Montana Code, is asking you to pass this bill. Why? Because the board that's supposed to oversee these programs are there to establish specific minimum criteria to ensure the health and safety of program participants. Why and what are these? These are building codes for the structures that the kids reside in, health and safety and sanitation requirements. The board evaluates the application of licenses to determine whether these programs meet a certain criteria. They're asking you to make sure that all of these programs have these minimum standards. Why? Because the public in Montana is protected by licensure from unprofessional, improper, and incompetent practice through our laws that we make. You heard about the Constitution. I am, as some people think, too much of a libertarian to be a good Democrat from Missoula, because I'm an attorney and I'm passionate about the free exercise of religion. I am a product of private school myself. But as you heard, the United States Supreme Court has time and time again said that the state has a compelling interest in protecting the health and safety of our kids. This is why government involvement is okay in this situation. The court has found that when we as a body, the state of Montana, enact reasonable, facially neutral regulations, that these are constitutional and they do not burden the free exercise of religion. I want you to think about who else we heard from today. You heard from the Department of Public Health and Human Services. The very head, Sarah Corbally, the head of the Family Services Division. You hear so often that they come in as informational. They have come in as a proponent and asking you to enact these regulations. And finally, you heard in opposition that the state cannot do a better job than the private sector. And I can't agree with that more. That's not what we're asking you to make a decision on today. I don't think that the state can do a better job than private, or my whole education didn't mean anything. I don't think the state can do a better job. We're just asking folks that do have private adolescent treatments to have basic regulations. I also don't think that the one, and again, I'm not going to use the name of one program, I don't think that they need to apologize for being a church-run facility. They might, well, run a perfectly fine facility. That's not what we're here about. We're here about that these government agencies are asking you to have all of the places that take care of our kids, kids that are a highly vulnerable population, kids that are sent here from other states away from their parents and their homes. We're asking for them to be minimally regulated by the state of Montana. And with that, they're photocopying right now lots of testimony from kids, including the newspaper clippings that unfortunately are about one program, and the only program opposed to it today. And with that, Karen, I think you have some audio from a student that would like to be heard. Thank you.
What do we have?
An audio and MP3. I don't know how long it is.
This is part of your close?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I wasn't going to mention an individual program, but it was.
Do you know the length of it or anything at all?
It's very short, I think.
Okay.
Choked repeatedly, year after year. Nobody heard me.
Can I take it back to the
Yeah, yeah, please do, because we don't know the
My
individual.
name is
or
James Mason,
They're there.
and I was once a child out of sight. When I was raped at the age of 13, nobody saw me. When I was choked repeatedly, year after year, nobody heard me. When I was finally brave enough, years later, to speak, nobody listened. My name is James Mason, This morning you will hear from Montana Family Foundation, who will seek to declare that House Bill 236 is nothing more than a witch hunt against a single institution, namely Pinehaven Christian Children's Ranch in St. Ignatius, Montana. They will tell of Pinehaven's beautiful scenery and reputable virtues while discrediting any claims of abuse, stating that Pinehaven has been cleared of all wrongdoing by Lake County Sheriff's Office. In the same breath, however, they will softly refer to very recent instances of violent and statutory rape.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to object to the entrance of this in the closing. This should have been included in the proponent testimony, and the opponents of the bill and the people being charged should have had the opportunity to rebut this testimony. I protest.
So noted, and the chair will agree with Representative Halverson. This should have been in the proponent aspect of the bill. As the sponsor closed, the sponsor has closed. This concludes the hearing on House Bill 236.